Passage from the Gospels that we've heard this morning on this 17th Sunday after Pentecost is a truly remarkable one, a great, astonishing miracle, really, especially when you consider it was a miracle done for someone outside of the pale of Israel, and also done not for oneself, but for one's child, for one's daughter. And we don't even know if the daughter wanted to be healed. We suspect probably not, because she was possessed of a demon. And when you're possessed of a demon, you don't know any longer what you really, truly should want. And yet Christ had mercy and healed this woman's daughter. Astonishing, especially when you think of I know Maltushka and me, and perhaps others of us as well, who have family members. It seems like we've been praying for them for years, and yet nothing seems to take place. And so I believe that this passage is a wonderful and salutary one for us today to ask God to teach us from. Our attention immediately is drawn to this woman's faith. She comes and says, Lord, thou son of David, have mercy on my daughter. Now, we don't know how she even heard of Christ, because she wasn't in the house of Israel. She was a Greek woman, Phoenician in background, from Canaan. And yet faith, St. Paul says, comes from hearing. We feel like if only I saw Christ, I believed, but this woman did not see, and yet believed, even as Jesus said to Thomas, blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe. And this woman knew that Christ could heal her daughter. And not only that, but was struck by the fact that this prayer request was not a selfish one. It was a prayer request out of love. It was a prayer request for others, for her daughter. And Christ, therefore, Spirit is made manifest in this woman, Canaanite though she may have been, because God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. He is not willing that any should perish, but that all should have everlasting life. And he is the one, the God, who teaches us to pray even for our enemies. This is the universal prayer of the church, that all the world would come to know that there is a God in Israel. And so after demonstrating such great faith, such remarkable faith really, and after demonstrating a spirit of love for others, what did this give her from Christ? Well, we read in this passage that what it gave to her from Christ was absolute and stony silence. Christ answered not a word. I'm wondering if you're here and you've ever found in your own prayers that sometimes the heavens seem like a vault of steel above our heads, that nothing can penetrate, and we begin to say, God, where art thou? But this woman didn't say, God, where art thou at all? She embraced the stony silence, and not to be deterred, she went to Christ's disciples and began to ask them to ask Christ in behalf of her daughter. And so how wonderful it is that, again, she shows us that that's what we are to do in our prayers. Don't pray alone. Enlist the prayers of the saints. Go to the disciples. Go to the most holy Mother of God and ask them to beseech her Son and their Lord in your behalf, in behalf of those for whom you are praying. But in this case, the disciples went to the Lord, and instead of beseeching for her, said, Lord, send her away. She's bothering us. What does Christ do? He says that I was not sent but to the house of Israel. What he's basically saying to her is that, you're pretty much a pagan. You are not of the church. You're not of the house of God. Where have you been? all these years I've sent to the church, to the lost sheep of Israel. And then this woman does something astonishing. She bowed down and kissed the ground in front of Christ, proving that true worshipers will worship the Lord in spirit and in truth. And she showed that she was of the Israel of God. Oh yeah, maybe she wasn't religious, hadn't been religious, hadn't grown up in the faith, hadn't had any of the advantages that those in the nation of Israel had received. But this woman showed that she truly was an Israelite by worshiping him. And the Greek word proskuneo for worship means literally to bow down and kiss the ground in front of Christ. And so she worshiped him, and she looked at him and said, Lord, help me. Those simple 3 words, Lord, help me, because I can't do it on my own. She was willing to humble herself, to bow down before Christ, and to say, I can't, Lord, but I know you can. Lord, help me, knowing that humility finds grace from the Lord, whereas pride drives him away. And surely this grace must have attracted Christ. Surely this worshiping at the footstool of his feet, as we do today before the cross, as we bid farewell to the elevation of the cross, surely that must have attracted Christ's grace toward her. But no. In God's good providence, he wanted yet to prove her faith. And so he said, I have not come to give the bread of the children of Israel to dogs. And the Greek word here is not just dogs, but it's little dogs. It's kind of like the weakest of the dogs, the worst of the dogs, the doggies. It's not right for me to give the children's bread to dogs. And here Christ was addressing himself to her. And how did she respond? How do we respond? How do I respond? In defensiveness. We respond with excuses. And no, I'm doing this or I'm doing that. How did she respond? She responded with the spirit of self-reproach. She said, "Ne, Kyrie," which in Greek, when you hear the word "ne," that means yes. And she said, "Yes, Lord. Truly, Lord, you are right. That is who I am." So she had the spirit of self-reproach. No longer was she worrying about anybody else but herself. And yet she said, even the dogs receive the crumbs from their master's table. And finally, in astonishment, Christ said, "Woman, how great is your faith." And at that very hour, her daughter was healed. Now, look at this. It seems as though this moment would never arrive. But more than anything else, this woman's faith was characterized by what? By perseverance. It would not die. It would not quit. It would not turn away, even in the face of silence, even in the face of, I'm not good enough, even in the face of, wait a minute, you are sinful. It refused to turn away. St. Isaac the Syrian says, if in each day recurringly we should receive 1,000 wounds, we should not become faint-hearted and abandon our course in the arena, for it is possible through one small opportunity to seize the victory and to win our crown. St. Gregory Palamas says that even though we are unworthy, and even though we are sent away because of the shame of our sins, let us learn not to turn back. I love that. Let us learn not to turn back, but to keep humbly asking God from our souls, we shall receive our requests from God. May God grant to us such perseverance for his name's sake.